using the global marketplace as a force for saving the world's valuable and threatened forests, as well as to ensure providing economic and social benefits for the business and people that depend on them, is the best way to promote sustainable forest management, thus avoiding destruction and depletion of resources. Natural resource conservation is the core strategy of the Global Forest and Trade Network, GFTN. Darien, Panama. The moon, in its waning stage, marks the beginning of the harvesting and logging season of trees in the Embera-Wunan region. These trees have been carefully selected based on criteria of sustainability and will be marketed by indigenous communities as part of their commitment to sustainable forest management and trade.
WWF viene apoyando este proceso desde el año 2004.
Project management and responsible forest trade in the Embera-Wunan is implemented by WWF, working out of the regional offices in northern Amazonia and Chocó, Darien, and was created through a partnership among country leaders, 10 indigenous communities, the National Environmental Authority, and other socially responsible companies.
A partir del año 2010 se firmó un acuerdo comercial bastante significativo para la comarca Embera-Wunan. Esta alianza con la empresa Green Life tendrá una duración de 10 años en primera instancia.
The following video is intended to describe the main activities taking place before, during, and after the harvesting of timber, based on technical and legal guidelines. The compliance of legislation in favor of environmentally friendly logging is the starting point of all forestry projects in Panama that aim to be sustainable.
Es necesario presentar los siguientes documentos. 1 es el Plan General de Manejo. 2, el Estudio de Impacto Ambiental. 3, el Plan Operativo Anual.
Simultaneously to the field activities, the project has organized communities to create community forestry enterprises, who are responsible for conducting field work and keeping records of their actions using their own staff. The community forestry enterprises receive guidance and constant supervision from the professional and technical staff of WWF. Verifying the legal origin of the wood, the chain of custody. Verifying the origin of the wood ensures the legality and sustainability of the forest, which is the main concern of responsible consumers who want to avoid the deterioration of the forest, biodiversity loss, and climate change.
We also get contacted by private customers because they are interested where comes the timber from. They don't want to destroy the rainforest, they want to keep it.
Identification of trees, inventory, census, and labeling trees. Census surveying is an activity geared toward tree identification and quantifying the volume of timber that can be harvested each year. The census marks the beginning of what we call the wood chain of custody, which means controlling the timber from its original origin to its final destination. Each tree within the annual harvest area will be surveyed, during which data is taken of their geographical location using a GPS, while its diameter and height is estimated to determine the volume of wood. Then, each tree is fitted with a metal plate that has an assigned code, henceforth allowing identification and tracking. Only mature trees will be harvested, which will average about 2 to 3 trees per hectare. This method will allow natural regeneration of forests and therefore its conservation. An average of 12 to 15 different species of wood will be surveyed, creating a list of commercial trees, seeding trees, and trees to harvest in the future. With the data, WWF's engineers develop dispersion maps of all species found in the Forest Management Unit that will help plan the network of forest roads and their subsequent use. Harvesting activities, directional felling techniques, and lower environmental impact logging.
El aprovechamiento de bajo impacto consiste en reducir los impactos en lo que concierne a la tala de árboles, el arrastre de árboles, el transporte, que son las actividades más impactantes al bosque.
Sustainable forestry begins with the logging of trees, which have been previously identified during the census. Felling is considered one of the riskiest forest activities and therefore requires continuous technical training of field staff. the chainsaw operators, and their corresponding support logging team. Apart from the sawmilling team, all workers must have security equipment to avoid potential accidents.
Reglamentariamente la empresa tiene que exigir a sus trabajadores que utilicen esos medios de protección.
Felling trees are carefully targeted to avoid affecting other trees, which, in turn, puts them in a comfortable position for further skinning. This increases machine efficiency and reduces the damage to natural regeneration and other trees in the area, which could be affected by the movement of the log. Felling, cutting, and hashing techniques. Community members are responsible for felling, cutting, and hashing of every tree of size agreed with the buyer. The size of the logs is determined by the size of the tree, the requirements of the company, and the ability of the skidder used for hauling the lumber. Community authorities are responsible for ensuring that the company makes maximum use of the tree's dimensions, thus reducing unnecessary waste of scarce resources. Marking logs. After the tree has been cut down and cleaned, it is painted with a specific code and lettering as follows: headquarters number, strip number, tree number, and name of wood species. Skinning techniques. To minimize damage to residue vegetation from dragging the logs from the chopping site to its next location, a skidder tractor is used, accelerating the skidding. The logs are dragged to the log yard and organized by species. There is strict control over the logs that enter and are released. Measuring and wood transport. For commercial purposes, community forestry enterprises and the buyer use the Doyle system for scaling and establishing the commercial value of each log. Scaling is the process of taking the dimensions of each log. This is done at the log yard before loading the logs onto the truck for transport. This data is processed in a database for monitoring chain of custody and payment. Throughout this process, the community forestry enterprises staff, the buyer of the timber, and the WWF is involved. The logs leave the management unit en route to the processing centers, bearing an identification code that will stay intact until their arrival to the industry and market. Community Forestry Enterprises, Trade Alliance, and Green Life.
Una alianza comercial y de inversión que permita un aprovechamiento sostenible garantiza un manejo responsable de los bosques.
Green Life Group is a Panamanian company in conjunction with the Embera, Wunan, and WWF, and is dedicated to the sustainable management of tropical forests in Panama, Darien.
Want to manage what we call the sustainable development is just only to be sure that we are not damaging the forest by extracting the wood the way it has to be extracted. But it's also to integrate all those people and those communities working with us, but just not on the extraction process, but also to have them integrated here in the plant. And they are our main forces and main resources working with us to produce on daily basis all the products we are sending to our customers.
I am convinced that our system, together here with the WWF, the Green Life Corporation, will help to protect not only the rainforest, also we keep the culture of the indigenous people.
Nos hemos planteado un nuevo reto, llegar a que este manejo sea reconocido a nivel internacional. Y esto será posible gracias a implementar la certificación forestal.
Les invito a las comunidades de la comarca Emberá-Wounang para que sean parte del proceso del manejo forestal sostenible, ya que es un medio para el desarrollo del medio ambiente social y económico, porque nos genera ingresos y los medios factibles para seguir teniendo bosque natural en la comarca Emberá-Wounang.